Hey, everybody. My name is Ruben Cruz, and I'm running for New York City Council in District 32, Queens. It covers from Richmond Hill down to the Rockaways, and I've been here all my life. I'm visiting you now from my home in Richmond Hill. It's a two-family house that I share with my mom. So she lives downstairs, which is where we are right now in her living room. And we live upstairs in the second floor and grew up here. I love my community. We moved back here 5 years ago, where we bought this house so that we could have the whole family together, taking care of my mom and her, helping us to take care of our daughter. So it's a really good arrangement. And I've been involved with nonprofit organizations since about 2003. And it's been such a rewarding experience to work primarily with seniors at senior centers and with children, youth in schools, in parks and cultural centers around the city since 2006. And with all that involvement that I've had working with city council members to help secure funding for programs for seniors or programs for children, it just felt like it's time for me to step it up a level and be on the other side, helping these organizations from the city council side, as opposed to always harassing them for funding and for helping to better our community. I'm currently the chairperson of the Latin American Intercultural Alliance. LAIA, as its acronym is called, started as an immigrant and women's rights organization. Initially, it was the Latin American Immigrant Alliance. And as it evolved in our advocacy, we found more and more people communicating through art. So as we developed that and our programming developed into tertulias. Tertulias is a authentic communication through art, which could be by poetry, song, dance, and theater. So we've expanded in that sense, and we're the only Latino-based organization in all of Southern Queens. So that's an honor that we certainly enjoy with distinction, and we continue to do the best that we can. So let's get to the questions that you had, and I'm going to try to answer them here. I already wrote everything down, and I'm going to send that to you along with some links that I think will be helpful. And let's take on the first question. Okay, what is the function job description of City Council? So City Council is for me the best position for me to be in, because it keeps me right in my neighborhood. Growing up here in Richmond Hill and spending my summers in Rockaway Beach and things like that means that I could stay here in my community helping out. What City Council does is it co-governs the city with the mayor. So the mayor and the City Council, what they do is they work on legislation, laws for the city. They work on the budget for the city. They negotiate and approve the budget. They monitor city agencies and make decisions on how the land in our city is used. For example, we all know not too long ago about the interest in Amazon having facilities in Long Island City. So City Council has a voice in how that land is managed. Does it work for us in the city? Does it work for us as a community? Does it work for us as a people in our neighborhoods? So that's an example of how the City Council works. We introduce laws that are voted on for the city. And the second question is, as a candidate for City Council, what are some of the issues in your local community that you hope to address while in office? So a little over a year ago, it may be 2 years now, the idea of going on the other side and becoming a city council member came to fruition. And it was a result of seeing what was going on in our neighborhoods. And I think it's a simple tenet to say all you have to do sometimes is stand in place and look around and say, that's something that nobody looks at. Why can't we fix that? One of the first things that's important to me that I think we need to work on is our school system. Now, our school system was created more or less in 1843, was it? Let me see. It was in the 1800s for sure. I'm looking around, I don't see exactly where it is. But our current school system is pretty young. It's only 17 years old. So our school system has gone through changes multiple times over the years. It's been broken down and built up again, broken down and built up again. And 17 years ago, it was torn down again, and now we have the Department of Education. Before it used to be the Board of Education, in which the community at large ran. And my daughter's behind me. We're saying goodbye to a friend with our dog behind the window, if you could see that. But getting back to it, we've had these changes in our 178-year history of the school system. Now, in 1964, over 450,000 students boycotted the school system due to poor conditions and segregation. All of these years, 170 plus years of our system of education in New York, and we still have the same problem of segregation. So what's wrong with this? I mean, we have this new system, 17 years old, and yet we're still having the same problem over and over again. We break it down, we tear it up, we break it down, we tear it up, and we still repeat the same mistakes. So I've always been a person that it's not about fighting for this, it's about seeing what's wrong and saying, hey, we got to fix this. So this is where we are now. This is something that I think we need to fix because the education system for our students is so unbalanced throughout the city that we can't catch up, and we should not be in this situation. Something else that bugs me is looking at how much our teachers are making. Our teachers are such a big part of our lives. A third of our life up until our late teens is spent with our teachers, almost as much as with our parents and guardians. So they are such an important component, and I don't think they get nearly enough pay and recognition as they deserve. According to figures that I could find, an average salary for a teacher in the public school system could be anywhere from $57,000 to $87,000, depending on if you have a master's degree and work experience and things like that. I don't believe those are the actual numbers. I believe it's less. I have to do more research on that. In general, I see accordingly in charter schools, supposedly, those earnings are between $27,000 and $87,000. So starting teacher salaries in public schools, $57,000, which I still argue, and in charter schools, $27,000. In parochial schools, that range is $23,000 to $69,000. And I've seen some figures that show $13,000, which is mind blowing. Like I said, I suspect that these numbers are lower than they have to be, but it's something that we need to address. As I stand and I walk around my neighborhood and look and I see dirtier streets, why should that be a concern? Well, our garbage cans, we used to have larger garbage cans that were enclosed. We had cleaner streets, and now, since the pandemic and protests, supposedly, I saw in the news. Well, one day, all these garbage cans disappeared, replaced with these smaller wire mesh baskets. Um, they've never been replaced since. Um, and the streets are dirtier day by day. This was supposedly done because of protesters, and they removed 2,000 of these garbage cans from the city. I don't see that they've been replaced. But more importantly, it's just the sanitation and pickup requirements that we need for this. Dirtier streets, um, food that's hanging off these garbage cans, and things like that uh, are a breeding ground for germs and disease. And flies come and transport this. And in the middle of a pandemic, the last thing we need is unsanitary conditions that promote um, this exposure to disease that we have right now. I think we need to address that issue and clean it up, so to speak, as soon as we can. Another thing is, since I do work so much with seniors, I think many of our seniors are vulnerable to predatory practices and unnecessary taxes. For example, there's a program called the STAR program in which seniors 65 and over can apply and get a significant reduction on their property taxes, 40% or so off their taxes. That's great, but by and large, many seniors don't know about this program. It's handled through the Department of Finance, and I don't see why at age 65 you have to do research to find out that there's a program to reduce your taxes. At 65, I think it should be automatic that your property taxes go down. They monitor us in so many ways. They know when our birthday is, so why make it so much more difficult for our seniors to get a break? It's hard enough when you're on a pension and limited funding to pay for the necessities of life, and to have unnecessary taxes that are so easy to reduce just doesn't make sense to me. Another thing that I see happening a lot, and it's happened to me actually this year, being in this house with, like I said, with my mom, we co-own the house. Well, my wife and I co-own it with my mom. And just by accident, doing the taxes this year and clicking a wrong link, I found that this house had a $60,000 lien on it. $60,000 lien. I had to call multiple times. Once I found that information, found out who was involved, and finding out who the lien company was, calling the lien company, who helped me find out that it was a solar panel company and a roofing company. In total, there was the lien company from California, the loan company that issued this loan of $60,000 against this house based in Connecticut, a solar panel company based in New Jersey, a roofing company based in New York, and this person, as many of us in this neighborhood know, these people walk through our streets, knocking on doors, saying, "Hey, we have a great deal on fixing your roof, or you can get free solar panels." And I research them all the time, and I warn my neighbors, "Hey, these people are known for predatory practices, overcharging or undercharging, and then tacking on more at the end, so they'll undercut regular pricing, and then when they're done with the program, they jack it up another $10,000 or $20,000." In any case, after a lot of calling and researching, it was discovered that this guy from Long Island had imitated myself and 6 other people in this area, and got them approved and for the $60,000 uh, roofing, solar panel project, whatever, and put liens on their houses. Did you know that it is legal to put a lien on somebody's house without telling them? So, especially for our seniors, they can be in their home all this time not knowing that there is a lien of $60,000+ on their home, and at time of moving or relocating or any other an emergency in which that they need funds, they can lose their home because they don't know that there's been a lien on their house all this time. So one, we got to change that law. How can anyone have the right to put a lien on your house and you not know about it? That's one thing. Secondly, what are the repercussions for this? How do you track down? I was lucky. I tracked this down through five or six: California, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, and Long Island. And then, so who has jurisdiction over what? Who gets arrested, if any? This guy, 6 times $60,000 is quite a chunk of change. $360,000. And in addition, they said that they had my voice recorded as accepting this offer. The only reason, and the only reason I was able to prove it, or they were able to prove that it wasn't me, was that this gentleman tried to imitate a woman. And that's when they discovered that this guy had imitated various people here in New York. Why did the lien company accept this? The excuse that I was given was because we all had a New York accent and we all sounded the same to them. So I think that's something that we have to do to help protect each other, our neighbors, and our seniors who are being tricked into these situations and losing their homes. What else? Affordable housing. I've heard for the past 20 years at least, our public officials stating how they've fought for housing rights. They fought to help keep this up. They fought for that, for housing. And I don't know, doesn't it seem like we're still in the same boat? What is everybody fighting for? And I'm not sure about you, but as you study more about politics and everyone's fight for a slogan, I'm going to fight for this and that and the other thing. They all say how they fought for and they passed legislation like they did it by themselves. We're a community of people that have to work together, and nobody ever does it alone. So we still have the same problem with housing, where the city claims that they don't have enough funds to do repairs on NYCHA housing that's desperately needed, and people continue in these horrible conditions and not being able to get out of the poverty circle. I have an idea that I think is so obvious that it amazes me that people don't think about it much or take it seriously enough. Now, working with nonprofits as long as I have, a number of years ago, under Christine Quinn was the speaker for the city council at that time. So this has to be a good 12 years ago or so. There was a row of buildings on East 4th Street between 2nd Avenue and the Bowery. And they were just old buildings. Some of them were old places where they used to do textile design and things like that. Basically abandoned or housed by whomever. And the city decided to sell each of these buildings for $1 to the theatrical artists on that block. There was a number of right now. There's probably a good 15 or so theaters on that block. East 4th Street between 2nd and Bowery has rejuvenated. There's a hotel now in the corner. These buildings with the $1 purchase, they were able to secure funding of, in some cases, $7, $8, $12 million to renovate the buildings. And now we have state-of-the-art black box theaters along the new little theater row on East 4th Street between 2nd and Bowery. Now, if we can sell an abandoned building to a theater for $1 and give them $8 million to renovate the building, why can't we say, you know what, we can't afford these NYCHA buildings? I say, why not sell? I'll say, you know what, I will sell you your apartment for $1. You will own your apartment. Now let's hold that off to a second. A lot of these NYCHA buildings are in prime real estate space, land, with incredible views. Real estate developers want this space. They want to take it over so badly. And what happens is our community that's struggling gets pushed further out. Now, what an incredible idea to help raise our community in a level of wealth out of poverty by giving them ownership of where they are. Now, if the city doesn't want to pay for renovations or anything, fine. Let's give it back to the people. Give them their apartment for $1. And then from then on, they have to pay, just like in a condo or a condominium, they have to pay a fee to maintain the space. Maybe a little bit more than the rent that they're paying now. But that apartment is theirs. They have sudden liquidity, wealth. How much could that apartment be worth? I don't know. I'm not a real estate guy, but I'm sure it's enough for them to say, I'm going to keep it, I'm going to maintain this, or I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to move on to something better in my life. But at least it gives how many thousands of people in the NYCHA system an opportunity to increase their state in life. Transportation. So our transportation system, the MTA, is run by the state. It's a very old system, 100 plus years. Again, it's gone through at least 4 stages of different modes of management. And run by the state, number one, doesn't work for me. And I don't think it should work for any of us. It's like, what would the federal government have to do with the running of our train system or bus system? And the state, which is responsible for parts of Niagara Falls, Buffalo, Albany, Long Island, what do they have to do with our transit system in the city? So I believe, number one, that the MTA needs to be managed and watched over by the city government, which is the mayor and city council, because we're the ones that are writing this transportation system, not up in the capital in Albany. So I think that's an important component before we can even begin to look at the infrastructure and what needs to be fixed. So the upgrading needs to be done. I'm surprised that we've had the ADA for 20 plus years, which is the Americans with Disability Act. How we can have so many laws and acts and governances and things like that, and still nothing changes. So part of law is enforcing it, and maybe some education. A lot of our facilities are still not accessible to people with disabilities. The upgrades take so long to happen, and even when we give a grace period of 20 years, it's still not met, and then we're giving them another 20 years. So I think we need to have a little more control over that and look at what we could expand. We need to expand our system so that we really reach as much as possible the entirety of our city in Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, and the Bronx, and Staten Island as much as possible. Wouldn't that be amazing? And we have some derelict systems, in particular one that runs right through my district, from through Richmond Hill down into the Rockaways, which would be a big help. The Rockaways is cut off so much, and with only one train to service them, and one train that actually has to split. So you have to know which A train or C train you're taking is still the same line that's going to go to the right or left and bring us back into the city. So we do need more access there as much as possible. So that was a really long but important answer to question number 2. Third, the question was, as a part of our project, we've been studying political and social movements of the United States. What would you say was one major political or social movement you experienced in your lifetime so far? We're a global community now, so I think we all experience in one way or another every social and political movement. It affects us in one way or another. In a way, in the United States, we're a little bit more myopic about it. We're a little bit more closed-shuttered about what's happening to our neighbors around the world. But let's stick to the topic, which is about political or social movement. I was born during the time of extreme social unrest, and it was basically the civil rights movement is what I was born into. But I think the one that touched me the most, or that's the most relevant, or that changed the most, is the LGBT movement. From Stonewall to today, it's changed so much. The right to marry, the freedom to come out safely, joining positions of government. But there's also been a lot of changes and setbacks. The HIV/AIDS crisis brought back fears and threats and setbacks because of the community at large. Whenever there's a movement, these movements cannot stop. Civil rights, women's rights, immigrant rights, LGBT rights, it's a never-ending battle. There's never going to be a day when we say, we won, it's over, we're fine. I pray for that day to come, but whenever we let go even just a little bit, they creep back, as we've seen over the past 4 years with this administration and a rollback of policies and how we treat each other, and immigrant rights and people's rights, women's rights. It feels like we've gone back societally to the 60s, starting all the way back there. We have a long way to come back again. We've lost a lot of ground, but I think it's the LGBT movement that's been such a game changer. We see it in our media, families together, making a family, So I think that's the movement that's affected me the most. Um, but like I said, it takes, and I wrote it down for you here, and I'm going to read it to you because what it teaches me is that it takes very little for old hatreds to resurface unless we're ever vigilant. And it's something that we all have to do together, all of us. Um, Question 4. Civil rights has been a major topic of discussion in the U.S. for many decades. In what ways do you think our government has succeeded in addressing civil rights issues? Okay, well, there's been several civil rights movements in our history, but the one that stands out the most for me, obviously, is the civil rights movements of the 60s, because that's what I was born into. And the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibited discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin, was a biggie. All these changes um, need that little seed or a germ to grow into something bigger, and it takes time. Just because a law is enacted doesn't mean that it's followed. It takes vigilance to continue to make that happen, and that was the first big step into expanding into everything else. The civil rights movement included everybody. So for me, I think that was a really big thing and a real big change in U.S. politics at that time. The follow-up question is, in what ways do I think government has failed in addressing civil rights issues? Uh, we've been talking a little bit about laws and enacting laws, but laws not being followed. So we have laws, these acts and amendments, the Civil Rights Amendment, the Civil Rights Act. Um, we have all of that, and yet we still have these wage disparities based on sex, religion, color, creed, orientation. So laws alone can't create change. Education does. And there's a quote that I really like from Justice Thurgood Marshall. This was I believe it was 1974. It was a case on segregation and education. Thurgood Marshall, by the way, was the first African American justice. He said, and I partially quote here, "Unless our children begin to learn together, there's little hope that our people will ever learn to live together." Now, I think that the laws are really important, but we can't change as a people the soul of our people unless we're learning together and living together. As we learn about each other and live together, then the laws that we enact for civil rights, equal pay, equality, make more sense, because how can we live to suffer our neighbor not being treated equally? So I think education, but more importantly, educating together and living together will help us to get to the next level that we need to with regards to civil rights. 5, our recent election has caused a lot of division in the United States. What do you hope to see in the next 4 years from our next president administration? There's something I wrote, and that's that the precedent of our current president, I'm sorry, let me repeat that. The precedent our current president has set up is that you could break the rules with little or no consequences. And because of that, we're in a state that, again, is going to take us a while to recover from, more than 4 years. Um, 2 steps back, 1 step forward, right? So we've lost ground, and lost ground is a little bit harder to recover than ground that you've gained. You know, we should be able to gain ground and hold firm to it, but over the past 4 years, we lost it, and old prejudices have resurfaced, and we're going to have to recover all that. So, what can I hope for? I think we see that with regards to government, this idea of rule breaking. What we've seen is that now the laws and that we enact and the rules that we make amongst ourselves could be ignored. So how are we going to rebuild on that? Well, we need leadership that not only follows rules but makes enforceable rules and keeps to them, in spite of what it could do to that person. We have to reverse a lot of those things, and it's going to be a really hard thing. Now, I have a program that I'm thinking about, which I'm calling Party of Two. So, to use a restaurant reference, and basically what we have now in our government is a two-party system, which is primarily Democratic and Republican. And what that creates is a win, no-win situation. It has to be my way. This clash between two forces in which it has to be one or the other. You can't have a little bit of both. There's been no negotiating room for the most part between these parties, I would say, since the late 90s, with the Clinton administration, which showed how we could just, as these parties go, just viciously block each other for no other reason than just to do that. Nothing to do with the welfare, well-being of our fellow people, our fellow citizens. So, how are we going to overcome that? I'm hoping that the administration can see that we're not even really a two-party system. We're a fractured party of systems. It's extremely evident, especially when our U.S. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, quite frankly, mentioned that she was thinking of not running because of the pushback that she had from her own party, who pushed back heavily against her progressive ideas, her Green New Deal and things. And that's not a team, is it? It's like I tell people a lot of times, if I'm the owner of the Mets, my team, I can't say that, yeah, well, I have, left-leaning Mets and right-leaning Mets. I have conservative Mets and progressive Mets, because that's not a team. So the Democratic Party is not a team in that sense. So I think one thing that would be good for the administration to do is to recognize that and help encourage the parties to kind of define themselves more separately. They're already there with the working party's family, the Libertarian Party, conservative, progressive. It's already divided, but they're still under the umbrella of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. I think let's let them split up the way they should be, and maybe we'll have more representative government, more inclusive government, and government that can compromise more. Because when it's one-on-one, it's just always an eventual clash and a battle. But when you have 5, 6 involved, then it's more of like, well, let's play a game and have some fun and try to work together. So I'm going to say that that's a hope that I have. that that can maybe happen. But the only realistic hope that I think I can see happening with our president and administration is to have a real pathway for citizenship for our immigrants. So, in a nutshell, that's what I'm hoping for. Number six is the Black Lives Matter movement has been met with varying responses from politicians all over the world. How would you work to ensure a safe and inclusive environment for all in New York? Well, again, it's related, isn't it? Law and learning, education and legislation. We can make laws to address these issues, but now we see that these laws can be often are ignored. So we need education. So what I would do is, my idea is to number one, ensure that we're enacting legislation, laws to first off discontinue use of these chokeholds. We know it, we keep talking about it, and we just do that. Very simple as far as that's concerned. I'd like to encourage more civics classes in our schools to teach us more about how government is run, how to make a difference in government, and hopefully encourage all of us, people of color, women, LGBT, to become public servants, in particular in law enforcement. That is my hope. I don't believe in a punitive action because it's just been our method of doing things for so long, and the results really never change. The only way to change things is to be inside there, to be talking, educating, making laws, enforcing them. But over time, as more of us become part of the solution, part of the lawmaking portion of this, and the law enforcement side, I want to see more of us in law enforcement. And I think that's how we can handle that best. Finally, today many states have their own laws that are separate from federal laws. What are some of the issues you've seen with how some states carry out state laws? In particular, how some states make decisions about women's reproductive rights that differ from federal laws. Okay. Our system of government is federalism. That means that the federal government and the local government, state government, rule the country jointly and separately at the same time. So we divide up the task of caretaking our nation. The federal government has the right to make laws that affect all of us all over the country, just as much as the state has the right to enact laws that affect them locally. That separation is necessary because we were 13 colonies from different places, and more than that actually, because but the idea is that different needs are required by different states, and that means that sometimes either lawmaking overlaps or it's in some cases in opposition to each other. But over time, we hope that as a people, as a nation, as a country, we grow more and more in harmony with each other. For example, cell phones. When cell phones came out, we were on the phones all the time. We were driving with our phones all over the place, and we noticed the need to enact laws to limit cell phone use when you're in the car. Hands-free, and then no use of the cell phone. Now it's texting. In some states, that law took longer to be implemented because it didn't seem as necessary until the accidents rates started rising, and the law that was started in one place started expanding to other states. Now, with regards to women's reproductive rights, that again is a situation where I'm always coming back down to law and education. Now, I'm very proud that we here in New York um, are not only one of the strongest advocates for women's rights, but I think we're a refuge for women's rights. And in spite of that, our organization started as a women's and immigrants' rights organization because we had to secure those for them here um, with other issues. It's so we're talking about women's reproductive rights, but there's abuse, spousal abuse, a lot of things that fall under women's rights and immigrant rights also. So with regards to how that affects us, between us and other states that are not supportive of this, we've taken a lot of steps back. We know that, right, over the past 4 years. So while we were coming closer together in this arena, now there's been some more separation and a lot of cloudiness put into this mix here. We'll get it back, but it's going to take some work. And that's going to happen with sticking to our guns with our laws and education. Education now is not just where we are now, you and me here in the classroom, but it's you and me in the classroom because we're online right now, isn't it? So under other circumstances, I would be there with you individually in your classroom talking to you. But now I have the opportunity right here to talk to you in Queens, to you in Nepal, and to anyone else around the world that may be watching this now. And little by little, that little bit of education that we all get to know a little bit more about each other, about what we think, and about what's right, then we'll get there. We have to respect the rights of the states to govern themselves along with the federal government, just like we need that balance here in city government with the mayor and the city council running the city jointly. That's our key to success, and I'm looking forward to being a part of it. And I encourage you to keep looking, follow my campaign and all the people that I'm in this campaign with, to see what's happening, to see what develops, to see how you feel about it, or in your school, find out who's running in your district. And I would say follow city council, because city council is the most local, the most boots on the ground type of politics that I think you can encounter. People that are here day by day. The grander issues are certainly important. Who's president? Who's this and who's that? But get to know what's going on locally, and that I believe will help us focus on more of the global issues. So I encourage you, like I said, to follow me and my campaign, as well as the others in this district, District 32, or look in your district at all the candidates and debate about it, look them up, get their stats, vote on it yourself to see what the results are. And I think you'll find it amazing, and it'll encourage you to participate more in our government, in the way we do things, and who knows what can happen. Anything can happen, can it? Another thing, as a final point, who can or should be a politician? Anyone. You can be. Initially, the city council, I believe, was supposed to be headed by common people, the butcher, the mail clerk, the homemaker. And the idea was that they would have their regular jobs, and at night they would negotiate laws to run the city. This would help keep those council members grounded in what was really happening in the community. Over the years, due to multiple changes, how much responsibility and power the city council got, that got muddied up a bit, and it's become more. Number one, it's a full-time job now, where you're not allowed to have an outside job. This is the only job you can have. I appreciate that, but I also appreciate the idea of having a job as a baker to really keep yourself grounded. Um, but in any case, um, now it's such a career, which I think is great, but I still think the primary purpose is for a normal person, just like you or me, to say, I see a problem on the street there that needs to be fixed. People are speeding all the time. Why can't we just put a speed bump? Simple solutions that you and me or anyone else can make. So for city council, all you have to be is a citizen and 21 or over. And anyone could be it. Right now, though, it's always about, I was a lawyer. It's mostly lawyers and people who their whole career is geared to politics. And I think that's great, but we need real people in there sometimes too, just to keep them honest and keep them grounded and keep ourselves grounded. So good luck, everybody. I look forward to speaking to you again.